Hi, welcome to gesture drawing. In this section, we're going to go over basic mannequin style gesture for the specific application that we're doing, that being zombies and our scene. The reason for that will become more clear when we get to the basic anatomy section of the course. So just on what I'm drawing here, you'll see I always start with the head, then I move down to the rib cage and the hips. What I'm looking for here is keeping my proportions for my head, my rib cage, and my hips all relatively consistent. I tend to draw my heads a little bit too big, so my characters will tend to look like dwarves. So I like to do it this way just so I can keep my proportions more human and less fantasy. Keeping in mind the subject matter, which is zombies, and the backstory for our scene, we're looking for a semi-dynamic pose for our zombie. For our purposes here, I want to keep it fairly straightforward. That's to highlight the anatomy and decay that we're going to add and not to confuse you with any really dramatic foreshortening or crazy camera angles, anything like that. This is primarily for just the anatomy of our zombie, how to render the decay, and how to color and get the best illustrations that we can. We'll look at both male and female and decide which of our gestures to use. So you see, when I finished this one, I shrunk it down and put it up in the top corner. This is just to give me some more room to work. And I'm going to do a few gestures here that are primarily skeletal, can be either male or female, but they do lean a little bit more towards male anatomy, and I'll explain that here in a minute. I'll do one that's specifically female. But again, you see I started with the head, moved to the rib cage, turned it slightly and hunched it over. Now I'm moving down into the legs just to make sure that my height proportion is accurate. This guy, we're probably going to give him a little bit of a restrained pose. Maybe he's been decayed a little bit longer. He's more of a gray than a pink. That distinction means in a pink, I just tend to think of them as they are more fresh. They were killed recently, and they've turned so that they're a little bit more dynamic. They can move better. They have better coordination. This guy, I'm going to make him a little bit more of a gray. He's been dead a while. One of his arms, like the one I'm drawing here, maybe it doesn't work very well, or it's not working at all. And he's not going to move as fast. He's kind of hunched over. That kind of thing. Get this one up out of the way. Adjusting the proportion a little bit, and then I'll shrink him down. Alright, this guy I'm going to add, we're going to try to do a little bit more of a turning pose. See, if we open up the figure, open the arms up, spread the legs, turn the head, it gives us a little bit more of an opportunity to make the scene have a little bit better movement in it. When all your figures are very static, even if you render them really well, it's hard to get the audience to look at what you want them to look at. So you use a lot of these gesture drawings to help guide the user to what you want them to look at. As I have it drawn right here, this could either be facing forward or facing backward. I'm going to draw this one as he's facing forward, just to keep things a little bit more consistent. When you've got your subjects turning around away from camera, you want to do that specifically to draw them into a different part of the scene, and not so much them being the subject. So you can see this is pretty similar to the first pose that we did, except for I've opened up the chest a little bit more, and dropped the arms down with a little bit less foreshortening in the one arm. And it's okay. I'm not really pleased with the head position here, so I'm going to go back and play with it a little bit. And I'm going to end up erasing it and doing something else with the head entirely. I do this a lot. Once I get them drawn, I'll grab sections and manipulate the sections to keep the size and proportions accurate, or at least consistent throughout that specific figure. I know a lot of you are going to be telling me the lasso tool is easier for this and you should be using that, or to make selections, and I usually do. I was just in a hurry here, so. Yeah, that head position works a little bit better for what we're going to use it for. Still not happy with the legs, though. I think they were a little wide. He looked a little bit too posed, and I want him to look a little bit more natural than that. That's better. And you see, like in the lower leg specifically, and I do it in the femur, I'll even do it in the forearms. I tend to make a longer sweeping curve and not many straight lines. If you've studied much anatomy, you know that the bones aren't perfectly straight, so that saying it's straight, bone straight, is inaccurate. Your bones twist and they do bend, so making sure that you keep those active bends in the bones will help make your characters, one, look more dynamic, but two, be actually a little bit more accurate. Starting the same way I did on the other one, doing this to show. So I said the other one could be facing forward or backwards. So you see me add the little triangles to the back of the rib cage there. That's to indicate the scapulas. That shows me that this character is facing away from me. I think I'm going to give this guy just a little bit of damage. We're going to have one arm, like the one above him, that's not working. Maybe it's been gnawed on and half chewed off, but it's hanging kind of lifeless at his side. Maybe he's taking a few steps here. He's turning to look at whoever the viewer is. A lot of times when I do characters like this, I put them in the background or on the profile peripherals to draw people into a scene, and they're generally not the subject of the scene. I'm going to go ahead and do a female, just so you can see the difference between how I approach them. You can see already the pointier chin, and I work off a modified hourglass shape. The first 4 of those that I did could have easily only been male, but this one is how I generally go about doing females. What that allows me to do is to keep the Q angle of the hips correct for one. The pelvic bone in a female is shorter and wider, and the femur bones sit at a lower angle with a steeper grade. So generally you'll see in the ones that could be either male or female, the knees are generally turned out. But in this one that's specifically female, because of the Q angle of the hip and the femur bone, I'm going to turn the knees in slightly and keep a little bit more weight on the hip as opposed to spread evenly between the feet. It's just a more feminine mannerism, and it helps push the idea of this figure's female. I'm not real happy with the proportions here. I'm going to make a little bit of adjustments. Get that base foot a little bit more under center, which will actually push the opposite hip out a little bit more, and then move those legs up and in. Now that arm is way too long, so we need to make an adjustment there. And it's just as easy to erase it and redraw it, but I've already got it drawn. It's easy just to grab the free transform and move it around. So the next thing we want to talk about is you have to remember that not all Zs are emaciated. Some can be severely overweight, and whether that's the way that they were before they were turned, or it's from bloat caused by decay, is irrelevant. What we want to do is we want to keep variety when we're drawing a scene. So body mass is a really good way to do that if you're drawing a zombie horde or you're drawing a group of people. We're going to draw a severely overweight zombie here just so you can see adding the body mass to it. Now, any of these can be turned into a zombie with this kind of body mass. You draw the skeleton first and then you add the weight on top of that. I'm just drawing it this way, more silhouetted, just so you can see what I'm talking about in variety of body shape. What we have to remember when we're drawing somebody with this size of a body, particularly with a heavily distended gut, is that forward weight would cause them to need to lean back just to stand, let alone in their movements. So you see me grab the marquee there and lean him back a little bit, and you'll see me here in a minute. I'll actually go in and shorten him up. I make him a little bit tall for this size of body mass, so I end up making him a little bit squattier once I've done this. struggling a little bit here with where I want to put that foot in the position I want it in. Do I want it completely up off the ground or peeling? Peeling means as you're walking, your heel lifts off the floor first before your toes leave, so we refer to that as peeling. Now, if I'm doing straight up character design for more main characters, I'll tend to do a lot of silhouetting and even solid silhouetting. But when I'm doing zombies like this, I want the ability to add the musculature and decide where I want the damage, and it's easier for me to add that in a layer at a time to get a little bit more accurate depiction of what's going on underneath the skin. Deciding on what I want to do with the arms here. I think I'll have them up over his abdomen, maybe like he's eating something or holding something. But you can see here I've done a lot of comic book kind of illustrations, because you'll see when I get this drawn and see how big that hand is. I'll need to go back in and shrink that down. It's like I'm drawing the Hulk or something. So I'll go in here and make that hand much smaller in a minute. Drawing fully fleshed out characters, or specifically really heavy characters, can be a lot of fun though. It gives you a lot of opportunity for movement. There we go. That's a little bit more proportional to the size. You don't want the head 4 times the size of you don't want the hand 4 times the size of the head. I think the other arm is going to be hiding behind the body here, so I'm just going to draw the other hand kind of sticking out. Put in some indications of how you can get that kind of movement in, make a oddly shaped mouth that's kind of slanting the same way he's leaning back. Basically removing the neck and adding that other chin. So there you have it, a overweight zombie. And see, I squashed him a little bit just to make him feel a little bit more squatty and distended. So I think the next one I'll do is one that's reclining. Not all your subjects specifically in zombie illustrations are going to be standing. So adding one maybe that's lying down or getting up off the ground, you'll probably be doing that a lot. So we'll do a quick one here of one that's in the process of standing up or leaning against the wall, something like that. That's makes it a little bit more interesting in the scene than just all your subjects standing. Move this up so I have some more room. Not real happy with the leg position here. Make a little adjustment, a little bit more horizontal. Move it up into the abdomen a little further. There was too much space between the rib cage and the hips. Still a little awkward. Making a little bit more adjustment here. That feels a little better. A little bit of a funky selection there, but I decided I didn't want to move that forearm. I'm just going to make an adjustment to the upper arm, to the humerus here in a second. It's a little better. The reclining figures can be pretty challenging. It's one thing when a figure's standing and you're distributing their weight evenly between their feet, but when you're drawing them lying or sitting on the floor, and specifically with this kind of a figure, you want them to look uh, very relaxed, not tense. So if they're all tensed up, it doesn't depict what a zombie would be. A zombie would be no tension in the muscles. It would, for all intents, it's a corpse laying on the floor. So until it starts to move, it's not going to have any tension. And you want to depict some weight. So doing that with an emaciated figure that's reclining can provide some challenges. So you see I'm struggling here with it a tiny bit, but we managed to get one that's acceptable. I think the last one I'm going to do here, because I only have room for one more, I'm going to do one more female that's a little bit more forward and maybe looking a little more aggressive. Just because we have a couple of male figures that are that way, and I want to make one more female that's similar. And then I realize that I've already done one hunched in that direction, so we're going to bring this one more straight on. Little bit of foreshortening for us. Drawing hands coming forward is a great way to engage with the viewer if you're good at drawing hands. If you're not, then it's something that definitely you should work on. And we'll get to that a little bit more when we get into the basic anatomy. You can see this one I'm taking a little bit in a different direction. I started off like I do a male. I started it off completely skeletal. But you'll see here in a minute that I'm going to manipulate it into that more female look. This process is primarily just to find proportion and movement in our subject. We're going to pick a couple of these and add them to our scene later, but for now, this is primarily just to get the feel of how we're making dynamic poses using a skeletal system. So your homework is going to be to download this sheet provided in the PDF and do a couple of pages, maybe 5 to 10 skeletal silhouettes for poses for our characters, and we'll use those in our final scene. Putting a mark next to a couple that I like here. I may actually change it later depending on how the scene goes and how we lay it out, but I want you to pick 3 and we'll go from there. See you in the next section. Thanks.